On September 17, 1862, the skies over Maryland were darkened by smoke and gunfire, and the ground was soaked with blood. In less than 12 hours, over 22,000 soldiers were killed, wounded, or missing, the highest number of casualties in a single day in all of American history. This was the Battle of Antietam, a day when not only bullets flew, but the fate of an entire nation was reshaped. It was more than a military clash. It was a moral turning point of the Civil War, between power and justice, between division and the ideal of unity. A short day, but one that changed history forever. By mid-1862, the American Civil War had entered its second year, locked in a brutal stalemate with heavy losses on both sides. The North, Union, held the advantages of a larger population, superior industrial capacity, and naval dominance, but it struggled with ineffective military leadership and wavering political will. The South, Confederacy, though economically and demographically weaker, had better generals and stronger morale, especially under the brilliant command of General Robert E. Lee. Following a string of defensive victories in Virginia, Lee made a bold move. He led his army north, invading Union territory for the first time in the war. His objectives were several: secure supplies, shift the battlefield out of the South, and achieve a decisive victory on Northern soil that might pressure the Union to seek peace. He also hoped that a Confederate victory would prompt Britain and France, two major European powers closely watching the conflict, to recognize the South's independence. From this strategy emerged the Maryland Campaign. Lee split his army into several smaller forces to carry out separate tasks, a risky maneuver. What he didn't expect was that fate would hand the Union an extraordinary advantage. A lost copy of his marching orders, Special Order 191, was discovered by Union soldiers in an abandoned campsite in Maryland. When this intelligence reached General George B. McClellan, commander of the Union Army of the Potomac, he suddenly possessed every general's dream: the enemy's entire battle plan and troop movements. With this edge, McClellan moved swiftly westward, aiming to cut off and destroy Lee's scattered forces before they could reunite. The confrontation that followed would erupt near a small creek called Antietam, soon to become the bloodiest single-day battlefield in American history, and an irreversible turning point in the entire war. On the misty morning of September 17, 1862, fog still cloaked the countryside near Sharpsburg, Maryland. Beneath it, the two largest armies on American soil at the time, the Union Army of the Potomac led by General George B. McClellan, and the Confederate Army of Northern Virginia under General Robert E. Lee, were quietly positioning for battle. The fighting would stretch along the banks of Antietam Creek, and, in less than 12 hours, would turn this peaceful landscape of fields, roads, and bridges into a nightmarish scene of carnage. The battle began at dawn. Union Third Corps, under General Joseph Hooker, launched an assault on the Confederate left flank, positioned in a large cornfield held by General Stonewall Jackson's forces. This cornfield became the site of some of the most ferocious fighting of the day. As Hooker's men advanced through the morning fog, they were met with devastating artillery and rifle fire from the Confederates. Although the Union troops initially made progress and pushed the Confederate lines back, Jackson's fierce counterattacks prevented them from holding their gains. Hooker was wounded in the foot and had to withdraw from the field, weakening the momentum of the Ear Corps assault. Next, Union 12th Corps under General Mansfield arrived to support the attack, but Mansfield was mortally wounded shortly after entering the fray. Then, the 2nd Corps under General Sumner advanced into battle in a disorganized formation and was met with withering Confederate fire. After 3 hours of intense combat, thousands lay dead or wounded, all for the gain of a few hundred yards of cornfield. Around midday, the focus of the battle shifted to the center of the field, where a sunken farm road, eroded over the years by wagons and rain, formed a natural trench. Here, troops under Confederate General D.H. Hill established a strong defensive position, using the terrain to their advantage as they repelled wave after wave of Union assaults. Initially, Union forces failed to break through, but around noon, a division under General French identified a gap on the Confederate flank. They maneuvered around and poured fire into the exposed side of the sunken road. In the resulting chaos, the Confederate line collapsed, and many Southern soldiers fled, leaving behind hundreds of bodies piled in the trench, forever earning it the grim name Bloody Lane. Despite this tactical success, McClellan failed to commit his reserves to exploit the breakthrough. Rather than pressing the attack and potentially destroying Lee's army, he hesitated, fearing a Confederate counterattack and squandering the chance to end the battle decisively. Meanwhile, on the Union right flank, 9th Corps under General Ambrose Burnside was ordered to cross a narrow bridge over Antietam Creek and assault Lee's right. But a mere 500 Georgian Confederates on the other side of the bridge held their ground fiercely, delaying Burnside's forces for hours. Not until early afternoon did the Union finally seize the bridge, later named Burnside Bridge, but at great cost. By that time, Confederate reinforcements under General A.P. Hill had arrived from Harper's Ferry. Hill's troops struck Burnside's exposed flank, driving the Union forces back toward the creek and saving Lee's right wing just in time. As night fell, both armies were exhausted. Nearly 23,000 men were killed, wounded, or missing in a single day. A horrifying toll unmatched in American military history. Yet Antietam's significance lay not only in its bloodshed, but in its stalemate. Neither side could claim a clear tactical victory. Strategically, however, Lee was forced to withdraw back into Virginia the following night. Meanwhile, despite having twice the manpower and Lee's battle plans in hand, McClellan failed to destroy the Confederate army. He was heavily criticized for his hesitation, and a few weeks later, President Lincoln removed him from command. The Battle of Antietam was not only the bloodiest single-day battle in American history, it was the moment the world watched the United States draw the line between a war for power and a war for principle. Lee failed to convince Europe to intervene, and the Union's strategic advantage gave President Lincoln the opportunity to issue the Emancipation Proclamation, a moral turning point in the entire war. As the battle ended, bodies covered the fields, and the cries of the wounded echoed into the night. Yet among the blood and ashes, a new chapter in American history began, a chapter of freedom, but also of pain and divisions still far from healed.